Hey everyone, welcome to Life Everlasting. This is going to be part 3 of the Learning to Read Sheet Music series. If you have not seen the previous videos, I highly recommend watching them first. After publishing this one, I'm going to make it a playlist, so just go to my channel, it should be there, be a playlist on learning to read sheet music. This will probably be the last one because we're kind of getting into the outlier stuff that you normally don't see, and so this is where I'm going to conclude here. Let me know down below what you think of the episode. I'd love to hear it. If there's anything I missed, I'll cover it. If there's anything you want me to go more in depth with, I'll do that. Again, I'd love to hear it, and until then, see you soon. Hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so this video is going to cover a lot of the weird stuff in sheet music. We're going to be covering tied notes, triplets, dotted notes, and a little bit on loudness, talk about crescendos and decrescendos, and finally probably some stuff on repeating loops within the song. So the first thing we're going to talk about is dotted notes. Dotted notes are not restricted to any kind of note that there is. You can put them on whatever. You can also dot rests as well, so that's pretty interesting. So you can dot any kind of note, you can dot a rest as well. Normally though, when writing sheet music at least, I don't do that because it just makes things a little bit harder to read. What I'd do is a little bit different. Anyway, so I'm going to use a dotted half note purely for example. I'm going to put it on the C. So what a dotted note is, when you see it, it is 1.5 of whatever is there in length. So a half note is 2 beats, and a dotted half note would be 2 plus half of 2, so 3. A dotted half note would be 3 beats long. So in the case of 4/4, all I can fit in this measure now after it is a quarter note. And if I put one over here, as you can see, it did not autofill. So 3 beats and 1 beat equals 4 beats. So whenever you see a note with a dot by it, that means 1.5 of whatever it originally was in length. So a dotted quarter note, I'm going to replace this one here with a dotted quarter note, would be 1.5 beats long. So if I put an eighth note here, and then a half note, I filled in the measure, as you can see, because 1.5 plus 1/2 is 2, plus 2 would be 4. In 4/4, that would fill the measure. And so on and so forth. You don't really see dotted eighth notes and onward very much. That's when the person who wrote the song is really mad at whoever wants to try to learn it, and so they're going to be mean to them, because that's getting into an eighth note and a half, and that's just really hard to count. And again, you can dot rests. Normally I wouldn't do this though, because 1.5 rests, that's kind of weird. If I was going to notate that in the song, I just put a quarter rest and then an eighth rest immediately afterward and make it abundantly clear. That way people don't have to translate it a little bit more than normal. Dotted notes from experience, I don't really see them very much when learning piano songs. Generally they'll do tied notes, which I'm going to show here in just a minute. But dotted notes are real common in stuff like if you're playing clarinet or trombone or trumpet or saxophone, where it's just one series of notes rather than 2 series. So generally that's where you'll see it. So the next type of note that's kind of weird in sheet music are tied notes. They're not restricted to the note type. The only restriction is something that I'll show you here in just a second. So I'm going to put a tied note down, puts a line after it, and what a tied note does is if I put another C here after it, it ties those 2 notes together. So generally what you'll see is tied notes that go across from one measure to another. You can see them within the measure. Generally that's if I put another note up here, then that's where a tied note would come in. Like, I want to play a half note C, but I want to play another note halfway through the half note. So to dive in a little bit of the logic here, what's going on, essentially the way to read this is take the two notes, their lengths, sum them up, sum the lengths up in terms of beats, and play it as a one note, like treat it like one note that is the summation in length. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Treat this like a 2-beat long note. And you're not restricted to how many you tie together. I could tie this whole measure up if I wanted to and just leave an outlier here. This would be 1 plus 1 plus 1. Treat it like a 3-beat long note. So that's essentially the logic behind it. The only restriction with this is if I put a note here, a tied note, sorry, and then I put something up here, you can't tie notes that are different. Even if it's a C that is on a different octave, you can't tie notes together that are not the same note, because these are different notes. Even though they're both C, they're on different octaves, so different notes. You just can't tie notes together that are different. So when I play this later, this will just play as two normal notes. It'll just have that weird little arrow in it that's glitched out. And you're not restricted to them being the same type. I could, let's see, tie a half note with an eighth note, and that is perfectly okay. That makes it a little hard to count because that's 2.5 beats long, but you know, you can do that and it's perfectly okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fill in the rest of this measure that I'm on with a dotted half note just to fill it up. So on to the next type of note. The next type of note we're going to cover are triplets. So essentially a triplet is, and with this one and like everything before, you're not restricted to the kind of note you're using in the triplet. A triplet is just taking 3 notes and grouping them together. Not great. So when you do a triplet, you'll see a little 3 above it, and you can tie quarter notes in afterwards. You can tie quarter notes in with it, my bad, like into a triplet. The thing is, you would think that filled up the whole measure, with the exception of 1/8 note. You think I'd have 1/8 of a beat, 1/2 of a beat left. But that is not the case. When you see a triplet, for example, in eighth notes, you step up to the next kind of note. So the next kind of note in our case would be a quarter note. These three eighth notes that are in the triplet sum up to be a quarter note. So if I was to put quarter notes into a triplet, let's change things up a little bit here and make them different notes. A step up from a quarter note is a half note. That takes up 2 beats, those 3 quarter notes. So I can put in a half note afterwards. So I'm going to play this, what I've put down, so you can hear it. This will cover the dotted half notes. This will cover the tied notes. This will cover triplets. So the way you count triplets before I play this is triplet 2, 3, 4. So da 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 da. And this one it'd be da 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 da, like that, kind of. But anyway, I'm going to play this so you can hear it. This will do a lot better job of playing this than I can. And with triplets, you can triplet any kind of note. However, you know, generally 99% of the time it's going to be eighth notes and quarter notes. More often than not, it's eighth notes. I have a song that is with quarter notes, but it's just for effect, and it sounds cool because it's off beat, but then it ends up back on beat again. So that kind of covers everything. Something I forgot to mention is you can dot a whole note. You just can't place it down in 4/4,
because, half of 4 is 2, so that's 6 beats long, and that doesn't fit. It'd have to be in 6/4 or something like that. So the next thing we're going to cover is loudness. There's a lot of different kinds of loudness, as you can see. Ignore everything after this strange word here. These are to deal with tempo. I'll talk about them in a second. But this is pretty straightforward. We're starting out at the loudest here with the triple F, and the softest here with the triple P. So this is very loud, pretty loud, kinda loud, somewhat soft, kinda soft, pretty soft, very soft. So that's how it goes. So this would be the quietest, and this would be the loudest, and essentially you're just saying different kinds of loudness here. Really, in my personal experience, I personally ignore these. I know that's kind of bad to say, but I do, because most of the time I've heard the song before and I can just go off it, The thing to remember, though, is this is the loudest, this is the softest. The more F's you have in it, the louder it gets, and the more P's you have in it, the softer it gets. While we're here, we're going to cover a little bit on these. These are just fancy words for tempo. I think this one means fast. This is moderate. I think this was in slow. That means start at whatever tempo you're at and go gradually get faster to the next BPM. So if we were on 60 BPM and then it changed to 120, we would accelerate gradually over to 120. This means slow down gradually. Then crescendos and decrescendos, they tie in with loudness. So a crescendo means start soft and get louder gradually. And a decrescendo means be loud and get softer gradually. Finally, there is the repeat in a song, like a loop. So if I was to put one here, at the end of the song, it looks a lot like the end of a song. At the end of the song, you just have a thin line and a thick line. But with the repeat tool, it's one thing, it's in the middle of the song, and it's the same as the end, but instead it's got 2 little dots by it. That just means go back into the song where you see the reversed version of it, and start from there and repeat it. Generally, what you'll see is 2 different measures here, one marked as 1 and one marked as 2. That means for the first loop, play the measure when you reach the end, play the one that has a 1 above it. And with the second loop, play the one with a 2 above it. I've never seen anything more than 2, but if there's more than 2, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. It would just mean if there's a 1 above this measure, then on your first loop, play this measure. Then on your second loop, play the one with the 2 above it. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave the episode here. It's going to be kind of a short one, but this is more or less just the weird stuff. We're wrapping up on this because once you get to this point, you're entering the really advanced stuff, and it's really rare. The only thing that I can think of this is something that the sheet music can't support, but sometimes they'll have little really tiny 16th notes beside the first note or something, and what that means is instead of just playing all 3 notes at once, you kind of just put it up onto it, like almost like sliding up to the note. Let me know down below what you think of the episode and what do you think of the content I'm producing. Let me know if you'd like to see me do anything different. I'd love to hear it. Also, if I missed something, if you have something on your sheet music that I didn't cover, then please let me know. I will cover it to the best of my ability. And again, let me know down below what you think of the episode. Till then, see you soon.